Hello, welcome back to Drinking by Myself. My name is Emma and today I have shamelessly stolen a video idea from my colleagues. Don't fire me. So ages ago at work, like 6 months ago or so, two of my lovely colleagues, Andy and Kat, were talking in the office and they came up with this podcast idea. So they were talking about like movies and TV shows that they just felt pretty meh about. Didn't hate them, didn't rate them. And they had this idea for a podcast where they would, each episode would be about one of these things they didn't hate, didn't rate, and they would have a guest on who either did hate or rate that thing and then could talk more passionately about it and see if they could convince them in one direction. I thought this was a great idea, would 100% listen to that podcast, but they haven't made it yet. So instead I have stolen their idea and I'm going to make a booktube version. Need my laptop up here for this. So I have picked 8 fairly well-known books here that I didn't hate, didn't rate, and then I'm going to go on Goodreads and look at some of the 1-star and 5-star reviews and see if people who are much more passionate than me about these books can convince me of their arguments. Also, you know, you guys feel free to try and convince me as well. Jump in if you have strong feelings in either direction about any of these books. So the first book on my list is Stardust by Neil Gaiman. Funny enough, I've read this twice now, and the first time I read it I did actually like it quite a lot. I loved the movie, so I think the first time I read the book I was just living the movie in my head and I was really enjoying it. But I recently reread it for the bookie trials that Rachel Marie ran, and I just thought it was profoundly meh. As I say, did not hate it, did not rate it. I know a lot of people felt the same way during the bookie trials. In fact, I think a lot of people disliked it more strongly than that. So let's have a look. First we're going to just look at 1-star reviews. Okay, so Jen says, in trying to write a fairy tale for adults, Gaiman completely missed the mark. Apparently his idea of what makes a story for adults is generous sprinklings of gore, violence and sex. I don't remember it being gory. Was it gory? Call me a prude, but I don't think words like nipple and thrust really flow well in a fairy tale. Okay, so see, that wasn't my issue with it. I didn't at all mind the fact there were sex scenes in it. I thought that was funny because it was surprising, so I quite enjoyed that. Okay, so sex and violence was not my problem. That'll be why I did not hate this book, because I thought that was fun. I quite liked that it was surprising in a fairy tale context. The next review is saying pretty much the same thing. Okay, so that seems to be the problem there. Right, let's see what convinced people to rate it. 5 stars from Ariel Bissett. So she says that she loves the movie and loves this in a different way. She likes the fact that it has adult themes, but she says that the book is slower and more whimsical and felt more grounded in reality. Wouldn't say that it felt like reality. Okay, somebody called Matchek loves the fact that Gaiman mixes humour with seriousness, realism with fantasy. Yes, I did really enjoy the fact that he mixed humour into it. I liked that. It made it a little bit surprising and unusual, as I said. But I guess he just didn't do it enough. Like, not compared to the movie, which is actually very, very funny. And I'm not into fantasy at all, so if you described that film to me, it doesn't appeal to me, and yet I loved it because it is so weird and whimsical and funny and just goes outside its genre. Even more so, I think, than the book it's based on. The book, having now seen that movie so many times and having that as my basis, the book is a little bit disappointing because it does that less. So there you go. That's why I did not rate that book either. Sorry Goodreads, you have not convinced me in either direction for Stardust. Okay, the next book on my list is The Grownup by Gillian Flynn. This is a novella. So I'm a big Gillian Flynn fan. I'm a big Gillian Flynn fan. I absolutely loved Gone Girl. And I didn't really like Dark Places that much, but I enjoyed it and I really liked Sharp Objects. So I just think she's great. Say what you want about Gillian Flynn, but it's only because she's popular. I really like her. Again, let's start with the 1 stars. JD is the top 1 star and she hates this. She said, this short story is the biggest scam and piece of crap. It's a sociopathic money grab. Okay, calm down, JD. She said it was boring, boring, boring. I didn't think it was boring at all. I was really into it while I was reading it. It was very enjoyable reading. It was just that it didn't like go the extra mile to kind of blow me away in the way that Gone Girl did. Somebody put here, I like my ghost stories to actually involve ghosts. The intro was crude, the middle was creepy, and the finale was a disappointment. I was tricked into spending money by nice packaging and the promise of an old-fashioned ghost story. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't what it said on the tin. It was a creepy story, but not that creepy, and it wasn't like a Haunting of Hill House style story. A threadbare plot, boring characters, and a flat ending. Yeah, I mean, I am agreeing with everything in these reviews, really. It's just that I gave it a 3 because I still did enjoy it while I was reading it. But I'm nodding along to these 1-star reviews, so maybe they are pulling me in that direction. A lot of people didn't like the raunchiness of it. I enjoyed the raunchiness, so that might be why my review's a little higher. Okay, let's look at the 5 stars. People here are really loving the twists and turns, saying like classic Gillian Flynn, you never know what's going on, then she twisted around on you, and I guess that's what I was lacking. I felt like there was a twist, and there are things that, you know, that suddenly happen and get revealed, and you view things from a different angle, but not in such a big moment, not like in Gone Girl. It's not like that. The ending had my low-key psycho side smirking in delight. Yeah, it does have that kind of ending, which again, I keep talking about Gone Girl. Gone Girl has that type of like really creepy, unfinished ending, which a lot of people hated. I really liked. So in theory I should have liked it in this one, but I just didn't feel like it was quite as terrifying. So based on those, I think the people who hated it are winning me over more to their side. I seem to be more in agreement with them. Okay, the next book I've picked is Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. I read this one pretty recently. It's my first Poirot novel, my second Agatha Christie novel, and I thought it was fine. Just fine. But also a little bit boring, and considering that it's like maybe the most famous one, I was expecting a lot more from it. Let's look at some 1-star reviews. Sway gave it 1 star. She said that it would have been better served as a short story. I found the book formulaic and boring. Yeah, I agree. It was really formulaic and really boring. So the idea is that on this train, the Orient Express, it gets stuck in a snowdrift. And while they're stuck in the snow, somebody is murdered on the train. And so they know it must have been one of the passengers on the train because they're stuck and nobody has been able to get on and off. And there's no footsteps in the snow or anything. So Poirot has to solve the mystery of who. Goddamn. Poirot has to solve the mystery of who on the train is the murderer. And that's basically the whole book, is him interviewing them all. And then he solves it right at the end. And I kind of enjoyed that bit, and I enjoyed the beginning when the murder happened, but the big majority of the book is literally just him interviewing each person one by one, and then some of them multiple times, and then like repeating what he's found out to other people, and then like writing down what he knows so far, and it's just the same thing over and over again. And there's quite a lot of people on this train, so it's not like you could even really keep track of them. I didn't have any theories because I just didn't care. Even in just describing that, I feel like I've gone down. All she had to say was the word formulaic, and I'm like, yes, I agree. Maybe I did hate it. Also, okay, the next review, Darren, I was pretty surprised at the casual racism which permeates this book. Yes, it's true. Not just as backdrop, but as a central aspect of the plot. The psychology used by Poirot is in fact nothing more than racism. Yeah, literally so many of his theories go off the fact that the Englishman couldn't have been the murderer because the body was stabbed, and Englishmen wouldn't lose their temper like that. It must have been a foreigner. And sexist as well. And like, as well as that being offensive, it also is just boring, because when I read a detective novel, I want to be like blown away by the detective's amazing skills at discovering things and noticing things that the average person wouldn't. I don't want to just see them be like, oh well, you know, this person's been stabbed really deeply, a woman couldn't have done it because women are weak and timid, and then that be how they solve it. That's not interesting. Yeah, that's basically what all these reviews are saying. Yeah, you're so right, you're so right. Okay, I agree with the haters. Now let's look at the raters. It's not a thing, it's not a word. Okay, Zoe gave it 5 stars. So this was her first Agatha Christie novel, and it definitely did not disappoint. She was not expecting that ending, which is obviously a good thing in a murder mystery story, but I'm proud of myself for picking up on some other clues. Yeah, so I actually did figure out the ending, or I didn't figure it out, I didn't know exactly how it happened, but I kind of had this idea in my head the whole way through of like, I bet it was going to be this, and it was. Yeah, again, I'm sorry, you 5 stars have not convinced me. I am giving this one to the haters. Okay, the next book on my list is a very popular one here on BookTube, and that is The Night Circus. I thought The Night Circus was fine, but I also thought it was very long and very confusing, and I couldn't actually tell you now what happened in it. And that's not just because it's been a while and I've forgotten. I mean, literally, when I got to the end of having read that book, immediately I already couldn't tell you what happened in it. So I gave it 3 stars though, because, you know, it was interesting, the writing was nice. So I'm actually going to look at the 5-star reviews first this time, because people love this book so much. And now there's the Stardust Sea just came out and people are so excited. So I'm actually just intrigued. I want to go straight to see what people loved so much about it. Wow, it has overwhelmingly 5 stars. Chima says, if I could trade places with anyone in the world, it would be with someone experiencing this book for the first time. I mean, when I was experiencing the book for the first time, I was just a little bit baffled, so I don't think you want to be me. She says, this is the kind of book you remember when you close your eyes and bathe in the moment of a sunset. The spiritual equivalent of waking up to someone stroking your face with a petal. If I woke up to someone stroking my face with a petal, yeah, it might be pretty similar to my feeling reading this book. And that's not a compliment. Rick Riordan has left a 5-star review. He says the prose sparkles and the story itself is a feat of magical acrobatics. See, I read a lot of reviews like this before I read the book, and the problem is I was so excited to love it, but I just didn't understand what was happening. I feel like all these people somehow understood what was happening, and I didn't at all. People called it magically romantic, breathtakingly enchanting. I disagree. It was just confusing and weird. They do say that it captured the wonder of the circus very well as a place of magic and wonderment, and I agree with that. I think that's what made it a 3-star for me, is that it does have this incredible setting which was really magical to read about. I just wish that I'd understood what this kind of quite epic seeming plot was about. Like, there's quite high stakes in this plot, and I felt like I really wanted to be gripped and be following what was going on and be rooting for people, and instead I was just lost. Well, you 5-star people all seem a little bit weird. They're all like very gushing reviews, so I'm gonna go down where I belong to the 1 stars. Okay, the top one here is from Becky. I don't like reading about circuses or parties or scenes of revelry and dreamlike wonder. I don't like magical realism. I don't like endless descriptions of every fucking thing ever. I don't like books without a point or plot or reason for existing beyond their own wank. It's funny. Okay, I disagree with Becky because I actually love all of those things. Alienor didn't like the fact the main characters are irrelevant and have no purpose in the plot, and I would agree with that. I remember that being a thing, that I just didn't understand who even these people were supposed to be the main characters because they were on the back of the book, but we didn't spend that much time with them. Sunny gave it 1 star because nothing happened in this book. Her review is literally how I feel. I'm gonna read it out because it's exactly how I feel. You know when you start reading a book and the writing is so fucking magical and you feel like you're in a fairy tale because the author's sentences flow like flower petals in the wind, but then you keep on reading and reading and the writing is still fucking magical, but also nothing has really happened, and then you're at the end of the book where the writing is still so fucking magical but still nothing happened? Yeah, that was this book. Oh my god, I'm giving that a like. That is literally how I feel. Okay, you've won me over, Sunny, 100% to the haters side. Okay, the 5th book on my list is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. I'm sorry, Jesse the reader. I read this one because he loves it so much and it's got such a cool premise, and I really like the fact that it has real photographs. So if you don't know about this book, the author, Ransom found real old weird looking photographs and put them in the book and then wrote a story around those photographs. And the photographs all look kind of weird and supernatural. They're like Victorian photos where they're kind of experimenting with photo trickery. So they look really creepy, and he puts them in and he writes a story around them, which is a really cool concept. And I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I liked looking at the pictures. I thought the story was cool. It had time travel. I like time travel, but it also wasn't that good. It was mainly just good because of the pictures. Should I start high again? Yeah, I'm going to start with the 5 stars again, just to give him a chance. Okay, Sarah describes it as pure magic. She says it was enthralling, magical, spooky and wonderful. One of the most original and captivating books I've read in a very long time. I would agree with all of those adjectives. I mean, I wouldn't say it was the most captivating book, but I would agree with those adjectives. The next person, Elise, says this book was perfectly peculiar. It's an entertaining, different and very well put together novel. Sure, I agree with you there. It makes me wonder if the author created his story to fit the photos, or if he wrote his story and found the right pictures to fit. Interesting, because I would say I thought it was very... Well, I mean, I don't know, because I actually don't know the truth, but I felt like it was very clear that he had written the story to fit the photographs. The concept was fantastic, the characters were incredible, they're all fascinating. Yeah, I mean, I'm agreeing. Ashley Devio says, I'm always a fan of time travel and this book presents it in such a unique way. Yes, I love when people find a new way to do time travel, and it did. So really, I should be agreeing with everything that the 5-star people are saying. Okay, fair enough. Raters, you have good points. Now let's go look at the haters. Okay, so Nicole is the top 1-star review. She says that she was bored. I wouldn't say I was ever bored reading it. She says the events were pretty cliche. I wouldn't say they were cliche. They were very strange. She was boring, tedious, dull, slow. The plot was tiresome with nothing special. The main character was a brat. I never mind if the main characters are brats. Interesting, for the first time in this video, I am not relating to what the 1-star people are saying. I didn't think the book was boring at all. The use of pictures became poorly justified. I really liked the use of pictures. No, you know what? Haters, I'm not with you on this one. I agree, maybe I should have rated this book a little more highly. Okay, book number 6 is Genuine Fraud. So this is an E. Lockhart book. She wrote We Were Liars, which is another very divisive book on BookTube. I actually loved We Were Liars. I thought it was great. I know a lot of people really don't. I thought it was brilliant. Then I read Genuine Fraud and I thought it was fine. As of course, you know I did because I'm putting it in this video. So Genuine Fraud is a retelling of The Talented Mr. Ripley. And I at that point had not read The Talented Mr. Ripley, but I had seen the film at least 3,000 times. So I know it very well, and this was like very much a retelling of it. Like a plot point by plot point, it's the same story. And that's fine, that's cool, but I feel like she was hinging on you not knowing the story of The Talented Mr. Ripley, because if you know it as well as I do, I knew everything that was going to happen, and I knew all of the twists, like from the beginning. I knew exactly what was happening, which I feel like she hadn't expected. I feel like she was banking on the fact that nobody knows that story, but it was a very popular film, so rookie mistake. Just in my own review here, I said, if you've read The Talented Mr. Ripley, you'll already know every single thing that happens here, so you might as well not bother. Upgraded from a 2 to a 3 because I liked the gender swap and the female take on the white male hetero action hero. Yeah, I remember thinking that. I didn't remember that I would have given it a 2, but I do remember thinking that I really liked the feminism in this book. Okay, well let's go to the 1-star reviews first, because I was kind of more down that end. So Fables and Wren says she was literally confused the whole time. I was the opposite of confused because I knew exactly what was happening. Oh, what I didn't mention about this book is that it's told backwards. Like every chapter takes place before the one before it, so you're going back and back and back towards the start of the story, and then there's going to be this big reveal. But if you've already read or seen The Talented Mr. Ripley, you know how it starts. Next person, Emma, also says confused. Interesting. So if you know The Talented Mr. Ripley, you're so unconfused that it's boring, and if you don't know it, you're so confused that it's boring. So either way, it was not a successful retelling. Someone here put, I see notes of The Talented Mr. Ripley. That's funny, it's literally the same story. And the next person also is confused. Yeah, so the 1-star people mainly say confused, which is very interesting. That wasn't my experience of it because I knew what was going to happen, but it's very telling to show that both ways, whether you know The Talented Mr. Ripley or not, were not a good result. So, going to the 5 stars. Okay, interestingly, the top 5-star rating from Elise the Bookish Actress. She says she wasn't totally shocked by much about the book, but damn if the ride wasn't enjoyable. So fair enough, she just really liked reading it even though she knew what was going to happen. And I would agree with that. I enjoyed reading it as well. The next person, Catherine, did think it was a massive surprise. Interestingly, she goes on to say that she has read The Talented Mr. Ripley and that she noticed it was the same, but even with that she still found it shocking, so that's interesting. What I will say here is that I actually don't agree with either sides. I'm going to stay where I was in the middle. I didn't think it was that exciting and shocking. I didn't think it was boring. I thought it was, you know, enjoyably written. I liked the main character. I just thought if you're going to retell a story, at least add something new to it. Okay, book number 7 on here is The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. So I loved the idea of this book. I read this one almost 2 years ago now. And I basically only read it because it had the same name, or the similar name as The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. And I read the premise and was hooked by the idea of it. So it's about a man who, he lives one day in this house. He wakes up one day and he's in somebody's body. And he lives one day in this house. At the end of the day, a woman named Evelyn Hardcastle is murdered. And then every day he wakes up and he relives the same day again, but from the perspective of somebody else who was in that house. And he has 7 days, and by the end of it, having lived the same day from all the different perspectives, he has to solve who murdered Evelyn Hardcastle. So really cool idea. But my problem with it was it was too clever. It was just too confusing. So while I was reading it, I had no idea what was going on. I felt like I needed to write like a timeline for myself and have post-it notes everywhere, which I can't bother to do when I'm reading a book. Like, I like to do a bit of mental work, but it was just too much. And then I did like the ending. I got to the end, I thought it was really interesting. It was a fun little twist. I really remember being confused when I read it about like, do I love this or do I hate this? I just couldn't tell. So I gave it a 3. So I guess this one's kind of an anomaly in this video because I both hated it and rated it. It's been incredibly popular though on BookTube. It didn't really, so I read it when the hardback was first coming out, which was February, almost 2 years ago. And other people hadn't really heard of it. I got it through NetGalley, and I didn't really see anyone else talking about it. And also at that point, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo also wasn't that big in England. It was very big in America. So I was like, I have these 2 books with the same title and nobody cared. But when the paperback came out this year, suddenly the 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle blew up. So let's go to the 1-star ratings. No, let's go to the 5-star ratings because most people seem to have loved this one. So the top review is from someone called Miranda Reeds, and she says she was so effing impressed. I was wholly ensnared by the mystery. I hardly knew what to think or where to look, but it was such a fun and wild ride that I didn't care. So I guess that's what we differ, is that I did care. I agree it was very impressive. I agree that it was a fun and wild ride, but that wasn't enough to compensate for the fact that I didn't know what was going on, or what to think or where to look. Interestingly, she says that the grand reveal was a bit of a letdown. I liked the grand reveal. Books with Emily Fox said it got her out of a reading slump. I would think it would put you into a reading slump. Fern Loves Books said it left her mind blown with an intricately layered and amazing plot. I would agree with that. I did think it was very, very clever. This was an outstanding literary puzzle. It was not only an expertly crafted whodunit, it truly ends up being so much more. I'd agree it was expertly crafted. I'm very, very impressed by it. Jessica says, I spent the majority of the story whispering what the heck is going on to myself over and over. Agreed. Why are they all agreeing with me but then giving it 5 stars? So basically the 5-star people loved the fact that they were confused. They loved how impressive it was and how well crafted, and so they didn't mind the fact that for a lot of the book you're just on this ride of not knowing what's going on because it all got tied up at the end, and they liked that. And I am kind of tempted to read it again if I can push myself through that to see if I can understand it a bit more the second time around. But now let's go look at the 1-star. Okay, so the top one there is from Melissa Martin. She says that she usually loves this kind of strange book, but I had to slog through this book. Seriously, I need to start DNFing because time is precious. Yeah, I felt like it was a bit of a flog for me too. Michaela is the next review, and she talks about it being fat-phobic. I have heard, I didn't particularly notice at the time, I have to say, but I have heard people saying that since. She's put a lot of quotes here talking about the ways in which it's fat-phobic. But that is a fair point. Luffy says, it's not literature in any way, shape or form. What does that mean? Of course it is. I felt revolted reading through the pages of this fucking garbage. Seems harsh. You seem too harsh. Ooh, I'm still stuck in the middle, but I think I'm being pulled over more to the people who rated it, because I agree, it was so impressive. It was so well laid. It was so well crafted. I now just feel like it was my fault that I didn't understand it. Okay, and finally, book number 8 on my list is The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. I read this one pretty recently, and I didn't hate it, didn't rate it. It didn't deserve the Booker Prize. So this, of course, as you know, is the sequel to The Handmaid's Tale that came out this year, 30 years after the original. The Handmaid's Tale is a book that I absolutely love. I think it's brilliant. I think if she was going to write a sequel to it, she should have done it a lot better than this. It was fine. The book was fine. The plot was engaging. I think if it was written by somebody who wasn't Margaret Atwood, I would have been way more into it. Because I'd been like, cool, like going into that universe and telling a different story. But when it's written by Margaret Atwood, you're like, why is this not as profound as the first book? So I just felt a little bit weird, and I don't know why she wrote it, really. Very interesting how many people that I follow gave it 5 stars. Okay, well, let's start with the 5-star ratings for this one, because wow, there's a lot of them. Interestingly, the top review here is from Lisa, and she thought she was going to hate it when she heard the announcement, and then was surprised that she liked it, which is funny because when I heard the announcement, I had really high hopes. So often, like, going in with low hopes often does make you enjoy it more, and vice versa. The next 5-star review is from somebody called Matt, who is really into the television adaptation, which makes sense to me because I did feel like The Testaments read more like it would be good on TV rather than standalone work of literature like The Handmaid's Tale was. Chris gave it 5 stars because he liked the meta experience of reading it after watching the Hulu TV series, because it's the cross-pollination of the TV plotlines and Atwood's narratives. So again, these are the things I didn't like about it. I can see why people who loved it as a TV show would like The Testaments, and I liked the TV show. I only watched the first season. I thought it was brilliant. I didn't keep watching after that because it all just was a bit too grim, but definitely while reading it I felt like it was catering to fans of the TV show more so than fans of the original book, and that was something that I didn't like about it. Trish gave it 5 stars because she says this is the response to readers who wanted to know what happened to the characters at the end of A Handmaid's Tale. But I didn't want to know. I liked that A Handmaid's Tale had this ambiguous ending. Okay, so basically all of the 5-star reviews are giving the exact reasons that I didn't rate it. So let's go to the 1-star reviews. The top one's from Tatiana, who says this novel is terrible. It's not terrible, it's just not. She does say it has a transparent, shallow, simplistic and ridiculous plot, which I maybe might agree with. You can only glimpse Atwood's former brilliance in a few moments here and there. Yeah. She says, so it's basically there's 3 points of view in the book. There's Aunt Lydia and then there's 2 younger girls. And Tatiana says that the girls are quintessential YA dystopian heroines, which is true. I did feel like the book read like YA. I expected something infinitely more sophisticated from Margaret Atwood. If you want a bland, basic TV show fanfic, ripe with action, adventure and genre tropes, enjoy. The Testaments was written just for you. I can't disagree. Nancy says it's an appallingly bad book. I wouldn't say, like, I'm just disagreeing when they have these really strong statements. It wasn't an appallingly bad book. If anyone else had written it, I wouldn't think that. It was just a letdown from Margaret Atwood. Lark Bonobi here has a really good point. I can't help but have the feeling with this novel as I read it that it's as hopelessly and cruelly outdated in terms of its refusal to incorporate race in the story as other sci-fi novels of the past. The problem of erasing racism as an issue was troubling enough in the original story, but at least it was written decades ago. Yeah. It's true, and I heard somebody once say about The Handmaid's Tale as a criticism of that basically that book is just Margaret Atwood writing about things that have happened to black women, for example, for centuries, but then just imagining, what if it happened to white women? And then suddenly everyone's like, whoa, what a terrible dystopian. And I do think that's a very valid point, and especially now in 2019, going back to it and still ignoring race is definitely a big issue. B says, what was this? Fan fiction? Ghostwriting? Atwood tries YA? YA? That's funny. Yeah, so I'm definitely agreeing more with the haters on this one, but it's just every time they say it was a terrible book or some big statement like that, I just disagree. I think if it hadn't been written by Margaret Atwood, people wouldn't be thinking it was a terrible book. So for that one, I'm actually going to stay firmly where I was in a don't hate it, don't rate it stance, right in the middle. So there you go, that was fun. So thanks to Andy and Kat for the idea that I just stole from you, because that was great. I still hope they make their podcast, because I would definitely listen to that. So do leave me a comment letting me know which books are super divisive and popular and talked about a lot on BookTube, whether people love them or hate them, that you just don't hate or don't rate and just don't have any strong feelings about. And do leave me a comment if you have stronger feelings than I do about any of the books mentioned there. Fight me. Should I hate them? Should I rate them? Am I missing something massive there? And do give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and hit that subscribe button below because I post new videos on this channel twice every week. See you next time.